This is a copy of Mario Kart DS, and this is a prototype of Mario Kart DS. I spent a lot on this. So I've always been fascinated by early versions of games, and seeing any content that got changed or cut before release. Like, look how different Mario Maker was a year before it came out. Everything has this cool shaded look to it, and check out this planet from an early build of Mario Galaxy that we never got. I absolutely love stuff like this. So when I spotted an early copy of Mario Kart DS on eBay, you just know I had to go for it. Sure, I could just play it on an emulator or something, but wouldn't it be cool to own the real deal? And, you know, would make some good content too. So boom, here it is, an early version of Mario Kart DS. It looks way different to the final game's cartridge, doesn't it? It's using an older logo design which looks just like the one from Mario Kart Double Dash. It doesn't even have an actual age rating yet, only the temporary rating pending badge. Now with this cartridge having a quote-unquote age rating along with all the other important details on the label, it's clear this isn't some internal development cartridge, but it's obviously not meant to get into the hands of the public either, due to the blatant not for resale badge, and of course it being an early copy of an upcoming game. So what exactly was the purpose of this cartridge? Well, this cartridge is known as the Mario Kart DS USA Kiosk Demo, and as the name implies, these were sent out to various stores across the US ahead of the game's launch. Obviously not to be sold, but rather to get people hyped up with a demo of the next Mario Kart game available to play. There are actually plenty not for resale demo versions of DS and 3DS games, and if you've ever seen a DS or 3DS demo unit in a shop before, it would have been these inside them. The majority of these demos seem to be based on final or very near final builds of their games, but that's what makes the Mario Kart DS Kiosk Demo special, as it's based on a much earlier version of the game, dating nearly half a year before the game's launch according to a build date in the ROM. So there's many differences between it and the release version to discover. Now I won't go over every single little change out there, but I will be covering a lot, focusing on the more noteworthy, interesting and weird differences. And yes, I will be covering some of the unused content in the cartridge too, because there's some really fascinating stuff in there. So without further ado, let's plug in the cartridge and see what awaits. Before we even load up the game, we can already spot a difference right away on the home menu being the game's icon, and it's a bit odd. The icon here features Mario in the good old standard kart, just like what we eventually got, but instead of being crisp, clean pixel art, it's a crusty pre-rendered model. And is it just me, or is there something slightly eerie about it? It's kind of difficult to make out certain details like the M on Mario's kart or his eyes. And why do his overalls lack any colour? What's Mario doing in a pitch black void? Where is he? Is this copy of Mario Kart DS cursed, or dare I say, personalised? Okay, I'm definitely over-analysing this, it's just a rough placeholder icon, but there is something a bit uncanny about it. But let's just move on and load up the game already. And here we are, the early title screen. That intro sequence was a bit off though, wasn't it? In the final game, before the title screen loads in, you can hear Mario hyping up the game by saying, "Here we go!" But in this early version of the game, he says, well, he doesn't say anything. And by the way, you know when the title screen music kicks in and it goes, well, in the demo version, it just doesn't exist. There's plenty of visual differences too, like the older logo, placement of copyright text, and slightly different background. But the lack of any buttons on the bottom screen is probably just because it's a demo and wanting you to get into the game right away and not mess around with the audio options, draw a silly emblem, but despite that you have to wait 4.5 seconds to get past the age rating screen even though this game doesn't have an age rating. And after that, straight into the character select we go, completely bypassing the mode selection screen. There are some slight differences here, like the font and there originally being a logo in the bottom right corner, and of course the really nice pastel green background, which honestly looks a lot nicer than the final one in my opinion. I also noticed that after you select a character, a randomly chosen voice clip is played. Unlike the final game where it just chooses the same voice clip every single time. It's weirdly got rid of this, but I suppose some of the voice clips sound a bit awkward. Oh yeah, and Donkey Kong, or simply DK in the demo, uses his Mario Kart Double Dash voice here where he just grunts. Sure, it's more realistic for an ape, but I'm glad we got the goofier sounding Donkey Kong we all know and love instead. After choosing a character, we skip straight ahead to the cup selection screen. Being a demo, they don't give us access to all 8 cups. Instead we only get 2, being the Nitro and Retro cups, which are just the Mushroom and Shell cups in disguise. Yeah, Toad, you ain't fooling me. And tell me why you're not representing the Mushroom cup, you're literally a fungus? Anyway, let's just hop right into the Nitro cup. Before we start the race, there are some HUD differences to point out, with like the countdown numbers having much duller colour scheme, and once the countdown finishes it says go instead of the final start. I have no idea why they would change this, like who says 3, 2, 1 start instead of 3, 2, 1 go? And speaking of questionable decisions, behold the early lap count. This is what it used to look like, and this is what we ended up getting. The heck happened to the number 3? Why is it more yellow than the rest of the text? And oh, it doesn't end there. Check at the bottom screen. The minimap and character icons look a little different, which is fine. I mean, darker outlines around the icons, that makes sense. But tell me why in the demo you can zoom in and out of the minimap, but you just can't in the final game? This is a good quality of life feature. Was there really any reason to remove this? Ugh, whatever, let's just get on with the race. Now, how does the game actually feel to play? Very close to regular Mario Kart DS, but I did notice a few things. The physics feel very close to the final game, and so does drifting. However, the blue sparks that usually appear while drifting aren't present in the demo. It's only a visual thing, but it does make building up mini-turbos slightly less satisfying here. There's a couple more things too, like you can actually hold blue shells behind your cart, which isn't possible in the final game. This is so cool though, like why did they get rid of this? Oh, and slipstreams I don't think exist? Staying behind another racer does trigger a subtle animation, but it doesn't seem to give a speed boost from what I can tell. Now how about the track itself? Good old figure 8 circuit. Well, the model isn't really any different from the final from what I can see. But you know what is clearly different? The music. It's noticeably lower pitched than the final song, and uses a unique set of instruments. Nearly every song in the demo uses different instruments, with some a lot more obvious than others. But overall, the game's soundtrack sounds a lot closer to Mario Kart Double Dash, with a more, I guess, cartoony feel to it, and many more trumpets in certain songs. Sounds like it came straight out of Double Dash, didn't it? And speaking of Double Dash, check out the item roulette icons. They're all completely unique to what we eventually got, and use their old Double Dash designs, like the star with the mouth, mushrooms with 2 spots on the top, and hold on a second, is that the chain chomp I see? Yup. Initially the chain jump was going to be an item in Mario Kart DS, before Nintendo ultimately scrapped it in favour for Build a Bullet. Unfortunately it isn't accessible in the demo. Even if we obtain it with cheats, it just crash bandicoots the game upon use, so clearly they hadn't implemented it yet. I guess when they got round to it they thought the chain jump dragging the cart all over the place was just too much for the DS. Or maybe there just wasn't enough time so they went with something simpler. Whatever the reason, it is a little sad the metal chumpy boy never saw the light of day, but hey, that's just game development for you. On the topic of inaccessible items, the Boo item from the final game exists in the roulette, but just like the metal mutt, it too never lands and crashes via cheats. The fake item box and blooper are also inaccessible, but that's because they simply don't exist as items whatsoever, not even in the roulette. You can't even cheat your way into them. However, there is a texture for the blooper in the game's files, using its Mario Sunshine design, but more on the unused stuff later. Ah, there's good old Lakitu. I wonder if there's anything different about him. I mean, of course there is, why would I put this in the script otherwise? The text on this sign isn't in uppercase as it is in the final game. Final lap. Final lap! And he also has a shadow below him, which doesn't exist in the final game. Why was an incredibly basic shadow texture removed? I mean, I guess it is a little bit buggy, but like, could they not be bothered fixing it? Hooray, we won the race, and wow, was that a different results screen. Plenty of changes were made here. There was initially these cool lightning bolt-esque lines for the top 3 positions, every position being listed twice, different fonts, and even different music. They really gave the screen quite the revamp at some point, though there are some aspects of the old design which I think I prefer. Now, as for the other tracks available in the demo, there are some differences between them and their final counterparts, but they're mostly just small things like different textures or other adjustments, though a few things are worth pointing out. Check out the paintings in Luigi's mansion. They twist and stretch, which is real spooky. But this fun detail was removed by release for whatever boring reason. But not all hope is lost, because they actually brought back the goofy moving paintings for when the track returned in both Mario Kart 7 and Tour. This isn't the only fun detail that was removed from a Luigi track. They also had the legendary Luigi blimp in GCN Luigi Circuit, which is completely missing from the final version. Why does Luigi always get it hard? What are they going to take away from him next? His mustache? And hey, remember Yoshi Falls? You know, that one track with the giant Yoshi egg in the middle? Well, that big old egg wasn't there originally. Gessler added it in to make the track feel more Yoshi-ish, I guess. And yes, I say Yoshi, not Yoshi. Been saying that since I was like 3 and I'm not gonna stop. There's not much else of interest to point out about the 8 demo tracks, but by using cheat codes we can access early versions of the rest of Mario Kart DS's tracks. Cheers, David. Now these unused tracks obviously have differences between them in the final versions, and the most drastically different is by far Waluigi Pinball, which has additional obstacles scattered across the track that eventually got removed, no fun 8-bit sound effects, no giant Waluigi statue or any pinballs, and quite a different layout to the final game. This is the definition of a beta track. There are so many little things that differ from the final track, and it's awesome we can access this. There are some more smaller but still interesting changes in the other tracks too, like the Pianta statue in Delfino Square originally being a Yoshi fountain, GBA Luigi Circuit missing its iconic rain effect, Bullet Bills lacking any eyes in Airship Fortress, no Pokies or Angry Sun in Desert Hills, and the greatest of them all, the word fresh being misspelled as flesh in one of the vehicles in Shroom Ridge. Yup, that was a thing. This probably happens due to L and R sounding very similar to each other in Japanese, so it's probably just a case of a mistranslation, but hey, it's still kinda funny. Some of these unused tracks don't have their actual background music yet, and instead use a placeholder song that isn't present anywhere in the final game, not even in the files. Because of the way I described it, you're probably thinking the music's nothing special, but oh, you'd be very wrong. Take a listen for yourself. Why did this absolute bop of a song not make it to the final game? Was it supposed to be for a particular track, or was it always intended as just a placeholder? And if it was the latter, why put so much effort into it? Well, at least the song has been preserved online for all to enjoy, but it does make you wonder how many other bangers Nintendo have made over the years just for them not to end up using, hidden away in the Nintendo vault potentially forever. But on a lighter note, there are actually more unused courses we can access, like earlier versions of some battle maps that have interesting colour schemes. But we can find even more obscure stuff, like an extremely primitive version of Waluigi Pinball. Yup, there's another one. With the textures looking absolutely nothing like the version we got, and a weird alternative path that goes below the end of the track. It takes way longer than the main route and there's no real benefit of it, so it makes sense they removed it. Also, the internal name of this track is Luigi Course. Could we have gotten Luigi Pinball instead of Waluigi Pinball? Potentially. There's also an old version of DK Pass without any snow, and a single Goomba and Thwomp near the end. There's also a version of GCN Mario Circuit which, hold on, GCN Mario Circuit? Wasn't that saved for Mario Kart Wii? Yeah, it seems they were planning on having Mario Kart Double Dash's Mario Circuit as a retro track, but scrapped it for whatever reason. This track is lacking a lot of its key features like the Chain Chomp Goombas and Piranha Plants, so I guess they scrapped it before it got too far. I should probably mention that GCN Mario Circuit, the early versions of Waluigi Pinball, and the other tracks you're about to see also exist within the files of the release version of the game. But not all of their textures can be loaded without modifying the actual ROM, and some objects are a bit broken, so the definitive way to play these tracks is through the good old Kiosk Demo, and hence why they're in the video. Now GCN Mario Circuit's not the only scrapped track. Some other courses that never made it to release include Block City, a battle course for Mario Kart Double Dash, Test Circle, a track that was purely for testing because, well, it's in the name, and it's literally just a tiny circle with one lap, and an original beach track named Noko Noko Course, with Noko Noko being the Japanese name for Koopa. This track kinda feels like a cross between GBA Shy Guy Beach and N64 Koopa Troopa Beach. There's a lot of branching paths, where some are much slower than others, making them kinda pointless. And I guess this one was scrapped in favour for Cheap Cheap Beach, which has a completely different and more balanced layout than it. And you can't forget about Dokkan Course. It's a very primitive track, even more so than Waluigi Pinball Cheese Edition. It has a rather simple layout, but makes up for it by having you go through two large pipes which are infinitely more fun than like any other pipe in the Mario Kart franchise, because they actually let you do loop-de-loops here. Don't know if this was supposed to be an actual track at some point or if it was purely for testing, but I feel it would have made for a fun early game track. And although it never became a reality in Mario Kart DS, a track similar in concept to Dokkan Course appeared in Mario Kart Tour, Piranha Plant Pipeline. This track has you driving through similar pipe tunnels, but with a more complex layout featuring split paths, half-pipe segments, and water streams. Who knows whether it was actually inspired by Dokkan Course or not, but either way, it's cool seeing something similar to a scrapped idea resurface in a later game. As we were just on the topic of unused tracks, we might as well go over some other unused content within the Kiosk Demo. Now the final game also contains a lot of unused content, such as early kart models, but I'll only go over things that are exclusively within the Kiosk Demo, like this. A texture of the Bowser Shell item from, once again, Mario Kart Double Dash. This item can't be used as it has no functionality here, but it is interesting seeing another item from Double Dash once planned for this game. There's another texture for a scrapped item, being a mysterious purple pinkish shell. This item hasn't appeared in any other Mario Kart game, not even in the arcade ones which have the obscure black and gold shells, so we have no idea how it would have worked. Maybe one day we'll know about like an earlier build of Mario Kart DS surfacing with the purple shell intact, but for now we can only speculate. Apart from items, there's some textures of very early menu designs that heavily resemble, say it with me, Mario Kart Double Dash. Yet again. These aren't functioning menus though, just static images, but it is pretty interesting seeing menu designs from likely the very early days of Mario Kart DS. And you gotta love that kart selection screen too, with its hue shifted sprites of the exact same kart. Hey, remember Mission Mode? You know, that really cool mode that only ever appeared in Mario Kart DS and desperately needs to return? Well, there are actually some Mission Mode levels hidden away in the Kiosk Demo's files. Most are early versions of missions that made it to the final game, but they have various differences like different characters or object placements. Some of them are pretty buggy too, like the Shroom Ridge one where Wario's in a constant loop of falling into the void and dying. You know, typical Wario stuff. And check out the scrapped mission where you need to collect a ton of coins within a minute. Now this does exist within the final game's files, but you know what doesn't? They're kinda ugly paper thin coins. But they do use their Mario 64 design, which is kinda cool. Well, the video's almost over, so how about we end things off with a scrapped character? Kinda. I mean, there is a scrapped character, but it's not really in the game, but it kinda is. Let me explain. So the Kiosk Demo only has 8 selectable characters, the default ones from Mario Kart DS. But once again, with the magic of cheat codes, we can play as the unlockable characters in a way. You see, we can technically play as Daisy, Waluigi and so on using the cheat codes, but I mean, I don't think that's Daisy? Their models don't exist yet, only their names on the bottom screen. But if we set our character to what should be Dryblands, and it says Gad on the bottom screen. Where have I heard the name Gad before? Yup, instead of Drybones, it seems that Professor E. Gadd from Luigi's Mansion was originally intended to be a character in Mario Kart DS. Although this is a cool piece of trivia, it is a little sad that he didn't make it into the game, especially as he's yet to appear in a Mario Kart game. Heck, he's not even in Mario Kart Tour, which has like a mole and a dog in it. But hey, if Kamek, a character who got cut from Mario Kart 64, can finally return over a couple decades later, then maybe the same will happen with E. Gadd someday. And well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this dive into the Mario Kart DS Kiosk Demo. To me it's fascinating seeing how different the game was earlier in development, along with all the unused content showing us a glimpse of what could have been. I mean, just imagine if chain jumps and purple shells became main staples to the series. And you know, owning this piece of Mario Kart history is pretty cool too. As I said earlier, I didn't go over absolutely everything, so if you want to learn more about the Kiosk Demo, I highly encourage you to visit its page on the cutting room floor. A seriously cool website if you're interested in early and scrapped content in games, and a really handy resource for making this video. And with that, the video's come to an end, so thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.